Hello there, Internet. MegaMogwai here, and I got another Legends of Runeterra video for you guys today. And today is a special day. Today we have to talk about the biggest balance patch in the season. It is finally here. Every time you've seen a troop of Elnuks hit the opponent's board and you've died a little bit inside, there was always this small ray of hope that said, you know what? Patch 0.9.2, that is exactly how you're imagining this, by the way, will come. And it will all be fine. And it is finally here. It's heartwarming, it's exciting, and I got a lot of stuff to talk about. So I'm going to stop rambling, and I'm just going to get right into it. I'm going to talk about the individual cards that got changed, my perspective on that, whether I liked it, I hated it, or whatever. And also, I will be talking about what I expect the future for that card to be after the change. So enough talking. Let's go on to talking some more, but about the actual thing. So let's move on to the first nerf of the day. We're going to be talking about the champions first. There were two major champion changes, and I am very, very happy about this one. Hecarim, your boy, the Alpha Centaur, the king of ranked. You probably have seen this guy around maybe a few times. Is a champion that was pretty much ahead of every other champion in regards to power level, and was easily the best 6-drop in the game. This guy was the face of pretty much every, or the majority of Shadow Isles decks, under the sun. This guy was there, whether you were playing control, mid-range, even aggro. This card was definitely viable in your deck, as it did represent 10 damage split across 3 bodies, with Overwhelm being added onto the main one at that. Obviously, Hecarim was too strong, and there were several different approaches that could have been taken at mitigating him. But I really, really want to talk about their reasoning and give you guys my perspective on what ended up happening, which I think is ultimately a very elegant and effective nerf to the card. It's not even an entire, or a nerf, sorry, in its entirety, and I'm going to explain what I mean by that. We've tweaked Hecarim to be less of a powerful finisher in any deck and more of a specialized ephemeral deck bomb. Hecarim has been seeing a lot of play, but in most situations he wasn't ever leveling up, which indicated he had too much generic power and not enough payoff for a specific type of deck where he might really shine. We're looking to shift Hecarim's power deeper into his ephemeral synergy. This is the most important thing, while leaving him a viable but weaker option for Shadow Isles decks in general. This is what I really like about this statement right here. Not only, this is an approach that Riot has been taking towards balancing that I am a big fan of. Instead of just completely murdering a card and leaving it obsolete, they are very cautious and meticulous with their nerfs. And a lot of times, they look to make up for said nerfs by buffing the card in other aspects in which, it's not really efficient at. And what I mean by this is, Hecarim was originally designed to be an ephemeral champion. A champion that would be incorporated onto decks that had a strategy that revolved around generating ephemeral units, right? You want to be able to level up Hecarim to get the benefit off of that. And he was kind of like he would be the finisher, more or less, of the archetype. But what happened is, while Hecarim did see play in ephemeral decks early on, as time passed, he kind of moved away from that archetype, as it wasn't deemed as viable as other Shadow Isle shells, and became the face of basically every Shadow Isles deck out there, mainly the mid-range fearsome decks, because of the fact that at turn 6, he was pretty much unrivaled in regards to pressure and potential value and damage generation, as he led an attack that would threaten half of the health total from the opponent's nexus, right? With these changes, they tried to, for one, reduce Hecarim's state as a staple for any sort of Shadow Isles deck, but also make him stronger for the decks in which he was originally intended to be a part of, right? And I really, really like that approach. So first of all, in regarding the nerfs, he got changed from a 4/6 to a 4/5. A reduction of 1 health is a pretty big deal, more so than people make it out to be, because one of the key aspects, or one of the strongest traits of Hecarim, was his resilience. Because he represents so much damage and potential burst, the fact that he had such a high health stat made him very hard to remove. And going from 6 to 5 will create a lot of diverse fringe scenarios in which you will all of a sudden be able to actually kill off Hecarim where you weren't able to do so before. Like, for example, you're playing Build of Runes on, and you got a Mystic Shot, and they get excited. Now you can kill Hecarim with those 2 cards. Before you didn't. And that's one very specific scenario. But a lot of those are going to flourish. And as time passes, people will realize how significant of a nerf this minor number alteration truly is. But obviously the big portion of the nerf comes with the reduction in power to the Spectral Riders, going from 3 to 2 power, which makes it so that Hecarim no longer represents 10 damage split across 3 bodies. Now on turn 6, he represents 8. This is massive. This is a big deal. Some people argue that they overdid it with this nerf, that they could have just tackled the stat line of Hecarim himself and left the Spectral Riders alone. I personally disagree. I think this is really neat. It was very important to take away from the raw power that Hecarim had, as my initial statements were regarding the overwhelm keyword. I didn't feel like Hecarim needed it, but then some people approached me who were more familiarized with the lore from League of Legends, and they told me that overwhelm is something that's very fitting for Hecarim, and he's perhaps one of the things that defines him in a way. Like, it's very flavorful because of the nature of the champion and how he performs and everything. And I've always stated that you have to take flavor into account when designing and also tweaking a card in a card game. I'm a big believer in cards being thematically correct, and I think that's also almost as important, if not as important, as actual card balance, right? So I like the fact that the Spectral Riders got toned down a little bit, but he still has the overwhelm keyword, and I respect that. And ultimately, I think this will definitely make Hecarim way less of a staple for any sort of Shadow Owls deck, though I think he still will see plays in archetypes, that are not the exclusively ephemeral decks, right? I feel like this is a big hit to the card, but it's still very, very powerful, very efficient, and ultimately it won't really, it's not as big of a nerf as some people will make it out to be, in my opinion. Now, the big thing, though, is the actual buff to the card in regards to the ephemeral archetype. Now, it got a bit of it got the Yasuo treatment. We're going to go with that. It went from requiring 8 or more ephemeral units to attack to have attacked with 7 or more. So 1 less ephemeral unit to have attacked for it to level up. And when he levels up now, he increases the attack of every ephemeral ally +3 instead of +2. So this makes him more favorable. It gives you more reasons to attempt to level up Hecarim. That was also another big issue with the card. It wasn't just like the raw power level of the card itself. It was also the fact that people didn't really care about leveling him up as well. So this is just fantastic. I love everything about this change, and I'm really looking forward to trying out the new version of Hecarim that won't be playing the ladder because it won't be put in every single deck for Shadow Owls, and see if this level up change can help promote the ephemeral archetype a little bit more than what we see of it now in Constructed. So overall, I really like it. I think Hecarim is really strong still, and I'm looking forward to a more synergistic sort of future for the card. Having that said, let's move on to Kalista. I was so excited when I saw this card. I've looked over this before recording so I could gather up my thoughts and all that. And I was super excited when I saw this because I get so many comments. A lot of people who watch my videos or my streams, they think I don't know Kalista exists. They ask me, Mogwai, when are you going to play Kalista? When are you going to make a deck about Kalista? Why do you ignore Kalista? And it's not that I ignore her, though technically I did. I know very well of her existence. Kalista was one of my favorite champions in the preview beta. But what happened was, in my opinion, a travesty. They completely redesigned her, and they took away the bonding ability that she used to have and gave her like a very generic sort of like aggro ability. And I lost interest in her, and I vowed that I will not play Kalista until they redesign her again. And now, you can basically expect a Kalista video coming near you very, very soon, because I am going to be trying so many different things with it. I'm so excited. This is like perhaps the card that I'm most excited about from this patch. Kalista went from a 3-mana 4/2 to a 3-mana 4/3 with Fearsome. Very solid stat line for a 3-drop, considering the Fearsome keyword slapped onto it. And she has a level up requirement that is a bit more expensive than before, or yeah, more expensive, I guess. She has to see 4 allies die. So it's basically the same as Lucian without a Senna counterpart to it, right? But if you get to level up Kalista by having 4 allies die as she is on the board, you will get this amazing leveled up version of Kalista, which is I'm just so excited about this. The first time I attack each round, revive an attacking ephemeral copy of the strongest dead allied follower. This round, we're bonded and it takes damage for me. What this means is as you're attacking with this leveled ephemeral, until that ephemeral dies, if your opponent tries to trade into Kalista, or if they try to like damage her with like a mystic shot or get excited or whatever, the ephemeral unit will be taking all the damage instead of her. This is pretty similar to what Kalista used to be. And it's a really powerful ability because every turn you're attacking, she's reviving again and again and again. And this is just like, this is so fascinating. Like I cannot wait to deck build around this card. There's so many like different approaches you can take. This is not only an awesome card for like a self-sacrifice deck, you know, with Curse Keepers, Ravenous Butchers, potentially the Undying, etc. She can also fit really well in an ephemeral archetype and be a really good counter support to Hecarim, as well as she is contributing to the level up with her ability. So she has high synergistic potential for several different archetypes in what is one of the best designed regions in the game. Yes, I just said that. Shadow Isles is one of the best, if not the best design region in the game. Design and power level are two different things. I do think it's a little bit high up in power level compared to the other regions, but that doesn't mean that it's not brilliantly designed. And what I mean by brilliant design is that Shadow Isles provides you with so many different archetypes, and viable ones at that. There are good established synergies, and there's so many different ways to build this damn faction that I really like it. It's one of my favorite factions, actually. But obviously, it got a little bit, you know, it has a few two cards that are a bit too good, right? And people that overshadows people's views on it. But I love the self-sacrificing archetypes. It reminds me of, you know, aristocrat sort of strategies from Magic the Gathering, the ephemeral archetype, the spiders, etc., etc. So definitely expect a lot of Kalista in the near future, because I am going to be trying everything with her, and I can't wait, man. That's all I'm going to say. I can't wait. So big hype from this, and overall very happy with the champion changes. Not happy with this though. Black Spear, aka Kalista's Black Spear, got nerfed from 2 mana to 3 mana. This is massive. Going from 2 mana to 3 is really bad for the card. Especially when we're talking about a single target damage-based removal card like this one. I don't think this is correct. I think they missed the mark with this one by a long shot, really. I think cards like Bile Feast and Glimpse Beyond deserve more attention than Black Spear. In fact, when it comes to early game damage-based removal, Bile Feast saw a lot more play than Black Spear. Black Spear has been going down in usage as time has passed, and it still was a really solid card, but it required specific decks to, you know, be built with it, right? And it didn't fit every Shadow Isles deck like something like Vile Feast does or Glimpse Beyond does, right? I think this change completely murders the card. I think it is not competitively viable anymore. I think going from 2 to 3 is a massive deal. And ultimately, I am not a fan, as I feel like Black Spear was a really neat source of removal for Shadow Isles in self-sacrificing decks. So this is obviously going to hurt Kalista, as it is her signature card. And we'll see. Maybe saying it's not competitively viable at all is a bit of an overstatement. But this card was not seen as much play, and this is a massive hit. This is a huge hit that it's taking, and I'm not a fan of it in the slightest. Let's move on from the champions though, and let's talk about the followers and spells. We're gonna start off with the now newly baptized Vanguard Lookout. He's not the border lookout anymore. He's a Vanguard. He's an elite, and yeah, that's basically what happened. That's all there is to it. He's still he's still Boom Crew Rookie's underperforming twin brother, and he will never fill those shoes, it seems, as nothing more to say. But at least if you have a Battlesmith on the board and you play the Lookout, then yeah, it's a 2/5. That's great, kind of. So yeah, good for you. I don't think this has major implications over your potential use in Constructed, but maybe I'm wrong. I don't think so, but maybe I am. Anyways, you're elite now. Good for you. So let's move on to the Mage Seekers. I really, really like these changes. Mage Seekers, especially the Insider and the Persuader, were not seeing any play whatsoever. Like I don't think I've ever run into a single match in which I faced either of these two cards right here, right? And let's see their reasoning, which is pretty much that, right? Mageseekers Seekers are amongst some of the most interesting characters in Demacia that aren't, soldiers. Keeping that all cards have a home principle in mind, we weren't satisfied with how the Mage Seekers ended up in beta, so we've reworked them as a group. Our goal was to make these cards more well-rounded in all forms of play, while providing Lux and other expensive spell archetypes more options in deck building. It's interesting how these synergize so well with Lux, despite the fact that they're technically her enemy. I know, like, the Investigator has, like, if you open up the art, Lux is, like, hiding from her, but, I guess the irony is what makes this thematically appropriate, and that's that, right? Like I said, I'm a big fan of these changes. I think these cards needed to be redesigned. They were not really viable before. And the Insider is not as exciting as the other two, personally. The Insider says, grant me +2/+2 once you cast a 6-cost spell this game. So it goes from a 4/3 to a 6/5. Now, one of the things that I have to look into, because I'm not entirely sure about this warning. In fact, I'm going to search... I'm going to search Lux real quick, because this is something that I'm not really certain on, is the text from this. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it works. So I'm gonna explain what's going on through my mind here. So basically, it says once you've cast a 6-cost spell this game, because it says this game, this implies that this effect only triggers once, and that's how I'm going to interpret it as of now. I'm almost certain this is how this works, but I could be wrong. Regardless, I'm going to go ahead and interpret it as if it only happens once. So this becomes a 4-mana 6/5 when you cast a 6-cost spell in the match, right? When it doesn't say that you've seen it cast, so once you cast a 6-mana spell, this is a 6/5 for 4 mana, which is nice. But ultimately, I think in decks like, for example, Karma Lux, in which you're incorporating Ionia, you would rather have something like the Emerald Rejuvenator instead of the Insider. I'm not sure how viable it'll make the Insider. Yeah, it does make it have a really solid stat line, but because it's requiring you to play a 6-mana spell, it's interesting though, because if you have a deck designed in a way in which you're floating the first couple of turns always, and you're playing a 6-mana, like for example, a Retribution, a 6-mana Retribution, you're generating a 5-drop, and then you play this next turn, you have a 4-mana 6/5. So this could actually be, with the right deck, this could actually be really legit outside of Lux support, actually. So yeah, it's interesting. It's definitely interesting. It becomes really strong if that pattern plays out that way. So I definitely will be messing around with it, and it's actually like not really requiring you to play with Lux in that sense for it to be good. So interesting card right there. Big pile of stats if you meet the requirement, which can be met prior due to this spell mana system, which is really interesting. Mageseeker Investigator now creates a detain once you've cast a 6+ cost spell this game. So this card does have to be on the board when you cast the spell, and she will create a detain. I assume that, again, because it says this game, it says only once, right? This is really neat because it's a 3-mana 3/3, so it's got a pretty basic stat line that's competitive. It's good enough to trade into stuff like Elise and other 2-drops, and do so favorably. You can trade into Fearsomes as well. And Now, the fact that it's creating a detain every time you cast it, like this makes it a really nice buddy to Lux, which is kind of, like I said, ironic, I guess. And Detain is a very powerful card to have. I like this effect. Not only like does it make the card more interesting, it also makes it more flavorful. Because, she is kind of like detaining, right? So I feel like from a thematic perspective and from a design perspective, it's just very interesting. It's really cool. And I'm definitely going to be looking forward to trying her out in my Lux decks in the future. And last but not least, we got the Mageseeker Persuader. Now, this guy got completely redesigned. Holy fuck. Like, this guy was a 4-drop before, but this guy was a 6-drop earlier. And now he's a 2-drop with a 3-2 stat line, which is really good, especially in this metagame, as it enables you to trade into fearsomes. And it can also push damage early on in the match. It's just a good, solid stat line to have. And if you cast a 6-cost spell this game, you're going to be getting +1/+1 and Challenger. Now, I think this makes this potentially better than the Mageseeker Insider, though I like going over that prior scenario in which you go for a 6-mana play on turn 3 and then you play this may change my mind in that regard, because I feel like that play pattern has a lot of potential. But the Persuader is really interesting because it doesn't gain that many stats, but the fact that it gains the Challenger keyword is really, really relevant. Challenger is a keyword that, regardless, even though we're talking about a 2-drop here, it's very much relevant at all stages of the game. And it makes it so that this guy on curve is a solid 2-drop, but in the late game as well is not a bad card to top deck, as he can utilize Challenger to pick off specific units or get away a pesky blocker as you go for a powerful attack, right? So I feel like this is going to make him very, very much viable, reliable, consistent, which is important. And I will be messing around with him as well. Really, really like these Mageseeker changes overall. And the more I think about it, though, the more excited I am to trying out the Insider. I think the Insider has a lot of potential if you deck build around it like that. Definitely really excited for that. Let's move on to the crowd favorite, nerfed from 2-2 to 2-1. Which will make it, easier to take down in trades and with removal in general. And I think it's honestly a fair change. This card is the face of aggro decks with Noxus, especially those who like to swarm. And I think it's a fair change, ultimately. I think this card is really strong anyways. And, what matters at the end of the day is the attack more so than the health, right? Even though he is more prone to removal now. But not much more to say. I really like the change. I think it's a good call. Now, I don't like this one. This is another Black Spear for me. Why is it another Black Spear for me? Because it got, like, Iceborn Legacy used to be a 3-mana burst speed spell, right? Now it is 5 mana and slow, which means that if you use this on an ally, like a spider, for example, and you're trying to, get all those buffs going, and your opponent reacts with, like, a Mystic Shot or a Wild Feast, if the target gets removed, then all of a sudden you just wasted 5 mana for nothing. It is highly counterable, and I don't think there was a need to make this slow. But I do like the fact that they're moving away from, like, a burst spell that buffed is all of a sudden a slow spell, which means they're not that spooked from the concept of making buffs fast or slow speed as well, which is neat. I just don't think this was a right call. Like they say, Iceborn Legacy hasn't seen much play, with the payoff clearly not providing enough deck building inspiration, and we're hoping a doubled effect at a higher investment offers a more appealing prospect. You should not have made it slow speed. I understand that at burst speed this card can be spooky, but slow speed is so bad, man. You can't even react to an attack with this, is the problem. And the fact that it can get disrupted anyways, and you're spending 5 mana and it can be so easily countered, is just... I think they made this card worse. I think they made it worse, and it is a shame, honestly. Pack mentality, 7 mana. Now it's like they actually, this is the new pack mentality, the Iceborn Legacy, because that's what this basically did. Now it says give allies +2/+2 and overwhelm. I actually like this card now. I think this card can be a legit finisher in certain like swarmy decks, like +2/+2 and overwhelm to like all your little dudes. That is really crazy. So I definitely will be trying out pack mentality, maybe like a spider build or something. I'll be looking into it, but it's it's really, really intriguing. Like I think this is a very, very strong buff overall to the card, and that can make it a solid, reliable finisher. Because unlike the new Iceborn Legacy, it will still trigger even if the allies get removed. You know, so that makes a big difference, and definitely a significant buff right there. Poro snacks from 4 mana to 3 mana. I love it. It's not like Poros are a top tier deck by any means, and you know, make it cheaper. I think it's fair, and I like it. I like this change. Oh boy. Oh boy. Have I been waiting for this moment? Have I been waiting for this moment for so long? Not really that long, but it's felt like quite some time. Troop of Elnuks got changed from looking at the top 10, or picking Elnuks from the top 10 cards of your deck. And now it says for the top 6 cards of your deck, summon each Elnuk and shuffle the rest into your deck. Definitely just straight up lowering the power level. I would have liked to seen this card redesigned, but the reasoning they give for them not doing that is that we consider a redesign that would be more deterministic, but we wanted to preserve Troop as a linchpin in counterfeit copies decks. So we busted out the hypergeometric calculator and done some playtesting to find a better rate for the Troop that allows more dedicated Elnuk decks to be powerful while reducing its effectiveness in decks just looking to splash the Elnuk package for value. And hopefully their hypergeometric calculator, that sounds very intimidating, was actually as effective as it sounds, and this change makes it so that this card does not see nearly as much play in, you know, regular decks, like for example Ezreal, Combo, Frost, and the likes. Very happy with the change. Just lowering the power level and making it not an auto include in Freljord decks is more than enough for me. And it'll still be interesting to see though, because as they develop more cards and they make more Elnuks, this card can still pose a bit of a problem design-wise, right? But you know, ultimately, just happy they toned it down. Maybe hopefully that'll mean we'll see this card less so on the ladder, and I am just a big fan of that generally. So, you know, big props. I understand. I would have liked the redesign, but I understand the reasoning, and that's all I really gotta say. Very, very happy about it. Navari Conspirator went from 3 attack to 2. It is now a 2/2 for 2 with elusive. So obviously this seems like a much worse version of the Green Glade duo, but at the same time, like Navari Conspirator's ability in the right deck is a positive effect, right? Like being able to, you know, recall an Omen Hawk is a big deal. So that's generally their reasoning for it. Ultimately, how much of this will affect elusive decks in general, I'm not sure. It's just one less power. It definitely goes a long way. Like, this is a big nerf, right? But ultimately, I think a lot of you watching this video are not really, you know, too upset about seeing an elusive take a hit like this. And I'm not a big fan of Navari Conspirator as a card. I mean, I like it from a design standpoint, but it's a bit of a nuisance to go up against. And, you know, elusive is a keyword that's going to prove to be problematic unless they incorporate more counterplay to it in the future. So lowering down the power level a little bit is, I think, a decent call to make. Chump Wump got nerfed. Our boy, our big belly beefy boy, is no longer a 4/4, he's a 4/3. Chump Wump is a threat that's often played both for the sweet mushroom value and its surprisingly good stats, making it a bit too generically strong in all Piltover archetypes. One of PNZ's weaknesses is having mediocre unit stats, and value cards like Wump should not be too effective in combat. I can agree with this change. I don't know how necessarily it was, but it is true that Chump Wump was definitely one of the better 4-drops running around, and it saw, like, if you're playing Piltover and Zon, you're most of the time playing this card, and you will definitely notice the difference from a 4/4 to a 4/3. There's a lot of trades that this thing was really good to trade into 3-attack fearsome units, and now he will not survive the exchanges, which is going to be a big impact. And as a PNZ fanatic, hurts a little bit, but at the same time, I can ultimately understand it. I think the card will still be good, but not nearly as much of I guess, an auto include in a lot of PNZ decks as it was before. Then we got Flash of Brilliance. Now, this is an interesting change. Create a random spell that costs 6+ in hand instead of just a random spell. Ultimately, I like this. It reduces the RNG component of the card. It also makes it synergize more with Lux decks as well, which I can definitely appreciate. And ultimately, they're they're very straightforward with this. Like, they don't want to nerf the card more so because they are happy with it being a core component of Heimerdinger or Lux decks. And I can respect that. I love it. I love Heimerdinger. I love Flash of Brilliance. And I know it can be ridiculous when you get multiple of these and you generate turrets out of nowhere for no mana. But, you know, at least you can't just like get a bunch of free spells off of it or cheap ones at that. And the fact that it actually synergizes even better now with Lux is a plus for me. And the variance is also reduced as an effect of that. So, big fan of the change. I like it. I definitely will be. I'm going to be playing a lot of Lux. Kalista and Lux are definitely two of the champions that I'm looking a lot into right now. Rummage got buffed. And I'm very happy about this. I love playing with Rummage. I love playing Discard Jinx. And not only that, but I also love this card in the Draven Heimerdinger mid-range list as well. So basically, for you guys that do not know how this card got buffed, it's very minor, but it definitely is impactful. If you have exactly one other card in hand, you discard one to draw one. So now if you top deck, like if you have one card in hand and you top deck a Rummage, all of a sudden it's not that in your hand. You can actually cycle your card, and it's not that big of a buff, but it really does make a difference, and it does more so in the discard archetype with Jinx, and I like that a lot. I think that's a very nice change, and I love Rummage, so maybe I'm biased in that sense, but I love it. Unstable Politician. Unstable Politician here is a card that a lot of you probably did not know existed, me included. I actually knew it was a thing. I thought it was the same character as the Experimenter, by the way, but it's a different guy. Basically, when I'm summoned, grant me +4 attack and quick attack. If you've cast a 6-cost spell this game, now it's changed to him granting, like you grant him the ability before. You don't have to summon him for it to be there. So you can play him beforehand, and then if you play a 6-mana spell later down the line, he will get the boost. Despite having you played him earlier, right? So I like what they're trying to do to see if they're trying to like make him work in a Lux archetype with Mageseekers. I'm still not sure about this card fundamentally though. Obviously having an 8/4 with quick attack is really neat, but I'm not sure this is the kind of card that you're looking for in said archetypes. I think ultimately it's early to say, right? But maybe this card like got better, but there's a good reason why this card did not see any sort of play. It's a bit awkward as a 5-drop. There's a lot of strong 5-drops it competes with for the slot, and the health stat line is not really that great, and obviously the quick attack would mitigate that, right? But I mean, it is a pretty big deal. Like an 8/4 with quick attack for 5 mana is really strong. But obviously you got to get that 6-cost spell going off. So it'll be interesting. Like the key thing about this thing is that it can never, well, it can be if maybe it falls into the same category as maybe I'm getting ahead of myself. Maybe there is potential for the Politician, especially with the Mageseeker as well. Maybe I could design a deck that has a bunch of 6-mana spells, and I always float the first couple of turns. Yeah, like I'm really gonna look into this. I think there's something to be explored in here, and I'm very excited to delve into those things. Yeah, because I'm running off a lot of these cards at first, but as I'm talking, I'm realizing that they actually have quite a bit of potential. Yeah, I'm gonna look into it. Maybe Unstable Voltician is better than we're all making it out to be, even before this change happened. We'll see. Brood, English Awakening goes from 6 to 5. I like this change. This card was not seen play in spider decks, and when you don't see play in a spider deck being a spider spell, that's not good, right? So I think this is a massive change. Again, 1 mana cost in this game is a big deal, and I definitely do expect Brood Awakening to see some play at 5 mana for sure in spider builds potentially. Maybe I'm not a spider player, so maybe I'm wrong, but I think this is a pretty impactful change for certain. Mark of the Owls. Think the Lord got changed from +3/+3 to +2/+2 in Ephemeral. To add to what we said about Black Spear, Mark was pulling too much weight for a 1-cost card. It was an awesome burst protection spell that also served as super effective removal when combined with a small unit, all on top of its capability as a lethal finisher, even in multiplies, or especially multiplies. Players will have access to a 1-cost spell almost all games, so they shouldn't have the levels of outright versatility that Mark offered. Unlike their, reasoning for Black Spear, which I disagree with, definitely agree with this. I love the change. This is the change that I was personally thinking about, and I think it's fantastic. I think it makes the card less of an auto-include. Mark of the Owls was low-key one of the most ridiculous cards in the game because of how powerful 1-mana combat tricks can be, and ultimately, this change is really, really neat, and it'll be interesting to see how it affects its playability. I'm not really sure because it's a big deal, right? Going from +3/+3 to +2/+2 is very massive, but it still does a good job at protecting units from removal and guaranteeing the hit. So I do definitely expect Mark of the Owls will still see play, but nowhere near the auto include status that it had before, and I am really happy about that. And last but not least, certainly not least, the Rekindler got upped from 6 to 7, so he got the Rasa treatment. We saw how big of an impact this was towards Ross's play rate. So the fact that, I definitely very much like the Rekindler taking this hit. I think the card was one of the most powerful cards in the game for sure. And especially for these late game cards, like one mana delay is inherently a 1-turn delay on a unit, right? With spells is different. So that has pretty big implications. Definitely expect Rekindler to see play in specific decks where it can really shine. Like, it's still going to be really solid, but it's going to tone it down. He's going to be toned down quite a bit, and I'm ultimately very, very happy about this change. I think it'll still very much be viable because ultimately the ability to resurrect champions is just inherently very, very powerful, and decks like Zombie Ash, even decks with Karma for like the Spooky Karma list, even still with Hecarim and the likes, you can get insane value out of this guy, and I don't think 1 mana will ultimately deem him unviable by any means, but it'll definitely hurt his viability a little bit, and I think it's a good start for a card like the Rekindler. I think the Rekindler is one of the most problematic cards moving forward, designing new champions and everything. And I really don't want it to be the case because I'd rather see, interesting champion designs that can't be as easily abused with this thing. But yeah, like I said, Rekindler is one of those cards that may require more attention later down the line as, more cards are made, and maybe just making it a 7-drop is ultimately not enough in the future. But for now, fantastic, and definitely think this change will be a big deal for sure. For example, the Garen deck with the Demacia core no longer can play Garen on turn 5 and then revive Garen on turn 6, which is pretty massive. So yeah, and they have the watch list here with the Elise Frenzied Skitterer, talking about them Glimpse Beyond, which I definitely think should have been, if something was going to take the hit, it should have been Glimpse Beyond over Black Spear in my opinion. And Shadow Assassin. I like the fact that they're looking over these cards. I was hoping to see some buffs to the likes of Vladimir, potentially Shen, maybe another buff to Yasuo, though I don't think Yasuo at this point. I think Yasuo will get much better when new cards are introduced to support it. But I definitely was I was hoping for like Vladimir and more so Vladimir changes, but we didn't get that just yet, though they did mention it in their article talking about their the current state of the open beta and all that. So that's something that they definitely have their eyes on, but they probably haven't realized what the change should be as of right now. So having that said, man, ultimately, I really like this patch. I love these changes. I'm very, very excited for the impact they're going to have in the metagame. I'm very excited to try out the Mageseekers. Super hyped for Kalista. I'll be deck building a lot around that. And ultimately, the majority of the nerfs and the buffs I very much liked. There's a few exceptions, but I do think that Shadow Owls has taken a bit of a hit, much needed one at that, and can potentially lead to a more synergistic sort of region, which it definitely has the potential to be. And that's where we'll end it here. We've been at it for almost 40 minutes talking about this. This was a big patch. There was a lot to talk about, and I don't think I rambled on too much. I think I said what I had to say about the cards, and ultimately you guys enjoyed the video. So thank you for watching. Let me know what you think. What decks or what cards are you excited to play with the most? Are you hyped for some Kalista content? Hopefully you are, because you're going to get a lot of it, quite simply. And yeah, man, but I also got like really intrigued with the whole like the idea of building our Mageseekers. That's like the biggest thing on my head right now that I really have to I want to dive into and see if I can make it work. But yeah, having that said, hopefully you guys enjoyed. Yay for no more Troop of Elnuks playing the ladder, hopefully. Just hopefully. And that's all I gotta say. Have a solid day. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I will see you tomorrow.